Assalamu alaikum students, this is your computer teacher and today we're going to discuss chapter number 1 which is on page 2 of your book, Wiz Looks Back. Our topic today is abacus. An abacus is a basic counting tool used to do math. It has a frame with rods and beads that can be moved. You can slide the beads to represent numbers and perform calculations like adding and subtracting. The word abacus comes from Latin word meaning table. The abacus, it's a Latin word and it means a table. It has been used for a long time in many cultures and is still used to teach math today. Abacus has been there for a very long time and it's still being used in different areas because it teaches you simple mathematics like addition and subtraction. Abacus was first found in ancient China. They made this device and it was used vastly throughout the world. This happened thousands of years ago. The Chinese used the abacus. Chinese in China, it's a wooden frame like I said before, and it has rods in it with rows of beads. So by moving the beads, they could add, they could subtract, multiply, and they could divide at the same time. Like they could do all of this, which is simple mathematics, they could do it on the abacus. And it's still used in primary classes to teach smaller children how to subtract, how to add, how to solve things with numbers and simple multiplication. They use abacus to do all of that. Now we're going to talk about Pascaline, the first calculating machine. Abacus wasn't exactly a machine, but it sort of was. But it used to you used to manually do things on it. Pascaline, on the other hand, it's a machine. It was the first calculating machine, known as Pascaline. Obviously, it was built in 1642 by a French physicist, Blaise Pascal, when he was only 19 years old. He built this all by himself at 19 years old. This early ancestor of the pocket calculator counts whole numbers by the cogs or teeth in a cog wheel. The cog wheel is connected to the mechanical gear system. Now you might be wondering what a cog wheel is. It's basically a toothed wheel and it's turned by hand. You have to use it manually. It was used to add and subtract numbers, just like abacus. Abacus was invented far earlier than the Pascaline. First abacus came into being and then came the Pascaline. Both of these calculators they worked manually, but Pascaline is far a little advanced than the abacus because abacus is just basic rows and beads, while Pascaline on the other hand it has cog wheel in it and you have to turn it and it does the task for you. Now we're going to discuss a Leibniz calculator. The Leibniz calculator, also called the step reckoner, is an early mechanical calculator created by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz in the late 1600s. It came into being after sometime later after the Pascaline. Both of these calculators were invented in the 1600s. It could perform basic math operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and even division. The calculator used gears and a handle to input numbers and get results. This invention was important for the development of later calculating machines because it gave the scientists who built the later calculators an idea of how to build one, what to put into it, and what tasks should it be doing. It did work faster than the Pascaline and the abacus, and it was worked manually. Like it was also called a manual calculator. They were very popular around the world when they came into being, because after abacus came the Pascaline, and after Pascaline came the Leibniz calculator, and each of them played a very big role in the country, in the world, when they came into being. Okay, students, now we're going to discuss a difference engine. It was made in 1933. You must notice, you probably are noticing how we transitioned from 1600s to 1933, and between the 1600s and 1933, abacus, pascaline, and the step reckoner, the Leibniz calculator, were repeatedly used around the nation, around the world, because nothing else was invented after until 1933, when the difference engine came into being. It is an early mechanical calculator, and it was designed by one and only Charles Babbage, the father of computer, in the 19th century. It was intended to automatically compute and print mathematical tables, and nothing had to be done manually on it, because the intention while building it was that it would compute everything automatically, like logarithms and polynomials using a series of gears and levers. The machines worked by calculating the differences between numbers. Hence, the number, although Babbage never fully completed the difference engine, his design laid the foundation for modern computers and computing concept. Charles Babbage laid out an idea of how to build a mechanical calculator that would do everything by itself. It didn't exactly complete what it had to complete, but it did give the people who built the later computers an idea of what to do and what to put into it and what levers should be used and what functions should it perform. All the idea was given by Charles Babbage itself. Now let's talk about Mark 1. The Mark 1 is one of the first computers. After 1933, you saw how we transitioned from 1933 to 40, and Mark 1 was introduced. It was one of the first computers built in the 1940s by Howard Aiken and IBM. It could perform. IBM is a sort of company that later came into being. It could perform basic math like addition and subtraction. The Mark 1 was very large. It was humongous. About 51 feet. 51 feet long is a lot, and used gears and switches to work. Like I mentioned earlier, Charles Babbage gave an idea of what gears should be used, what switches should be used. He basically laid out a map of what to use when creating a computer. It was an important step in computer history because obviously it was one of the first computers. It was far more efficient than abacus, Pascaline, Leibniz calculator, difference engine. It was big in size, but it did all the things for you. It was more efficient than the previous devices that I just mentioned. Now we're going to talk about ENIAC. ENIAC, electronic numerical integrator and computer. You're gonna have to learn these abbreviations because I might include them anytime in a surprise test, could be monthly test, could be anything. These abbreviations are very important. You must learn them, and you must have them on your fingertips. You have to learn them this good. Anyways, ENIAC was one of the first electronic computers completed in 1945 and used for complex calculations. The earlier computer, especially the Mark 1, they were mechanical computers. This one right here, ENIAC, is an electronic computer that did the tasks for you. Now, UNIVAC, like I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna say it. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You have to learn abbreviations very carefully. You have to have them on your fingertips. UNIVAC, UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer. It was one of the first commercially available computer. ENIAC wasn't commercially available, while on the other hand, UNIVAC was commercially available computer, introduced in 1951, transitioning from 1945 to 1951, and designed for business and scientific uses. UNIVAC was for designed for business and scientific uses. Could be any business and scientific uses, does not matter, but what matters is what purpose were they built for. Now we're going to talk about transistors. Transistors came into being in 1956. Transistors are small electronic devices. They're used to control and amplify electrical signals. They replaced vacuum tubes in computers and other electronic devices because they are smaller and more reliable and use much less power as compared to the vacuum cleaners. The previous devices could be Mark 1, could be Univac, and all that. It used much less space and used much less power. Transistors are fundamental components in modern technologies, enabling the development of computers, smartphones. They're in your computers and they're even in your smartphones and various other devices. Their invention in the 1940s marked a significant advancement in electronics. When they came into being, it was revolutionary and it basically advanced like the system of electronics that we have right now. Now we're going to discuss integrated circuits. When did integrated circuits came into being? They came into being in 1956. An integrated circuit IC, also short for IC, abbreviations must be learned carefully, must be focused on carefully. Anyways, IC is a small chip that contains many electronic components such as transistors, resistors, and capacitors, all combined onto a single piece of material, usually silicon. Integrated circuits allow for compact and efficient designs in electronic devices, from computers and smartphones to appliances and vehicles. Integrated circuits are not only installed in your computers, in your tablets, in your phones, but they're also used in your appliances. Could be your fridge, AC, could be anything. They're also used there, and they're used in vehicles. They could be used in buses, vans, cars. Electronic cars have also came into being. Integrated circuits are very revolutionary and can be used anywhere depending on the machine. The development of ICs in the 1960s greatly advanced electronics by making devices much smaller and more powerful. What they did was basically they made the devices smaller, but they made them such way that they became more powerful than the previous invented machines. The integrated circuit, it was first used in United States Air Force. Like I said, integrated circuits are not only installed on your phones or your vehicles or your tablets, PCs. They are also used in vehicles, and Air Force is one. And when was this used? The American Air Force used it in 1961 to create computers using silicon chips. The electronic handheld calculator too, it was also built with an integrated circuit. It has an integrated circuit in it. I'm gonna tell you a fun fact. It's not exactly a fun fact, but it's journal knowledge. Jack Kilby, he was a person, alright, a man. He received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2000 for his contribution to the invention of integrated circuit. He took a very big role in the creation of integrated circuit. Now we're gonna take a quick review. I didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention this again. What's a tablet? A tablet is a personal computer, and you can touch it. You can touch it because it has a touch screen. Cavemen used their fingers and toes to count. The Chinese used the abacus for counting. The cavemen. What are the cavemen? The people before the abacus was invented, the people that did not have much, uh, you know, opening to the revolutionary world. They used to count on their fingers and toes. And then came the abacus. Chinese used them for counting. And then came the Pascaline, the first ever machine used for calculation. After that, there was Leibniz calculator that we used for calculation, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then Charles Babbage, sometime later, the father of computers, tried to make a machine that could do things like the modern computer does, but the parts had not been invented. Charles Babbage laid out a map of what to do, but he did not exactly invent those parts that could have been used in the computer. Later on, Mark I was amongst the first electronic computers that had to be invented, that were invented. Then came ENIAC, the first electronic computer. It could solve problems at a faster speed than any of the previous computing machines at the time. Then the invention of transistors made computers smaller and faster. Slowly, the computers became smaller. The particles. Thank you, students, for listening to my lecture. I hope you learned something from it. No knowledge goes to waste. And I hope this was interesting to you and you find it interesting and you find it encouraging to learn this chapter, to understand this chapter thoroughly. And I hope I was able to convey that. I was able to do that for you. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.